And their assets include everything, the helicopters, jets, buildings, fucking buildings. How do you lose a goddamn building? David Copperfield doesn't even lose buildings, and he makes them disappear.
Now to that big accounting error at the Pentagon that could actually be good news for Ukraine. NBC's Courtney Kuby joins.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say, you hear big accounting error at the Pentagon, and you're like, oh my God, they're going to cover it. MSNBC is going to cover the $21 trillion with a T. 21 with trillion with that with T, like tits, like traumatic. $21 trillion financial discrepancy at the Pentagon over 20 years. And actually, it's larger than that. Now, if you add recent numbers, it's up to $35 trillion of unaccountable financial adjustments in the Pentagon's books. And, oh my God, they're going to do it. They're going to cover it. This is incredible. Finally, mainstream media. Oh my God, they're doing it. It's happening. It's all happening. And here's what the story actually is.
Just from the Pentagon with the latest. What can you tell us about this, Courtney?
Yeah, we're talking about upwards of $3 billion here, Chris. So essentially what happened is this is part of the president.
$3 billion with a B, not T as in tits, B as in boobs, as in balls, as in bubbly, as in holy balloons. So there are $21 trillion, and it's actually up to more like $35 trillion now, of unaccounted for financial adjustments in the Pentagon's books. It's been covered. Yes, it's been covered more by me than maybe anyone else, which says how sad our media is. But it's also been, there's been a couple of articles in Forbes. There's been a couple of articles in The Nation. So it's not like it's gone unaccounted for. I mean, uncovered at all. It's just only gotten a little bit, never mentioned on mainstream media, never keep it nice and quiet, hush, hush on all that. And here's MSNBC going, we have discovered a fraud, a problem, an error at the Pentagon for $3 billion with a B dollars. A drop in the bucket. This is a classic example of what they call a limited hangout, where the government or the Pentagon or the CIA or whatever fesses up to something, or the media reveals something. But what they're revealing is such a tiny, tiny mote of a modicum of what the reality is. And people see that tiny, tiny speck and they go, that's it. That's the whole problem. That's it. That tiny speck right there. And it's in a mountain of fraud or corruption or bullshit. And yet people go, look at that little speck right there. So right now they're pointing at a $3 billion speck in a $21 trillion fraud. Thank you, MSNBC. Doing well. Actually, that's kind of what, let's see how quickly I can type this in. That means if they're telling us about $3 billion and 21 trillion, that means they're telling us about 0.0143% of the problem. 0.014% of the problem. Which I would say if you were to sit down and really calculate it, is about the percent of real news you could get from MSNBC. I think that's pretty accurate. About 0.014% of the actual news going on in our world is covered by these clowns. So thank you, MSNBC, for revealing 0.014% of the problem.
Presidential Drawdown Authority process, the PDA, that we've been hearing about for more than a year now. These are the weapons and equipment that the U.S. takes from military stockpiles and provides to Ukraine. We usually hear about a new PDA every 2 or 3 weeks with more equipment, and associated with it, they'll give us a rough idea of how much that package costs. Well, what we have learned is that during some sort of an accounting process where they were looking back and at these past presidential drawdown authority packages, they realized that in some cases they were taking the cost of the equipment as it would be today, as opposed to, in many cases, this equipment is 20 years old or even older, as opposed to what the military paid for it at the time. So when they've adjusted the total amounts back to the actual cost of the equipment that they're providing instead of the inflated cost for today, they found that there's this $3 billion difference, which they're now saying, according to the Pentagon, will now be used for future presidential drawdown authority packages, essentially giving them an additional $3 billion. But what I have to point out here, Chris, is...
So, of course, there's the fact that they're celebrating the fact that more money, more billions of dollars can be sent to Ukraine, to neo-Nazis fighting on the borders of Ukraine. And for those of you who need to hear it again, I am opposed to war. I want peace in this world. So I'm opposed to the Russian invasion, but I'm also opposed to the U.S. creating a proxy war in this world. So I am adamantly opposed to sending more weapons to neo-Nazis in Ukraine, sending more money to neo-Nazis in Ukraine. But here they are reporting this, it's really a fraud, although they act like it's an accident. Like the Pentagon, no one at the Pentagon thought to account the amount, the price of the weapons was back when they were bought 20 years ago. It didn't occur to a fucking soul at the Pentagon. What are they doing there? They just running around with paper bags over their heads, bumping into walls. No one thought to account for that. But aside from that, this is a tiny fraction of the problem. It is a nothing 0.014% of what the truth is at the Pentagon. But again, MSNBC, their job is to make you think that this is it. This is all. This is what this is. We've sussed out. We're covering a mistake at the Pentagon, and oh, what a big mistake it is. And they limited hangout. It is nothing of the actual fraud and corruption that goes on in the Pentagon. And this is also, there's a lot of this that's by their own admission. A lot of the missing assets at the Pentagon have been admitted by the Pentagon. I know I'm called crazy for bringing all this stuff up. A lot of it is admitted. The Pentagon in the last audit, they failed 5 audits in a row, right? These are the first times they've ever been audited. And they failed 5 in a row. So they've never legitimately successfully been audited. They failed 5 in a row. And the latest one, which ended in November, they found that they couldn't account for over half of their assets, meaning the Pentagon, the spokesperson for the Pentagon walked out and said, I don't fucking know. I don't, over 50% of everything they have, they don't know where it is. They can't account for over 50% of their assets. And their assets include everything, the helicopters, jets, buildings, fucking buildings. How do you lose a goddamn building? David Copperfield doesn't even lose buildings, and he makes them disappear, okay? Unbelievable, the amount of corruption, fraud. And it's almost, at that point, when you're missing half your assets, you're almost better off just saying you did it on purpose. You're better off being called corrupt than being said, than saying that you are that aggressively dumb. It's better for you to walk out there and go, look, we are corrupt up to here. We have to wear water wings, inflatable armbands just to be able to stay afloat above our own bullshit corruption. They are better off doing that than walking out and saying, well, no, where half of our stuff went. Like, I mean, I'd rather have the first group, the people saying, yeah, we are corrupt, insanely corrupt. This is a fraud, unbelievable amount of fraud. You're better off saying, I'd rather have that. I don't know about you. Let me know in the comment thread which you'd rather have, immense corruption or immense idiocy. Now, I'm not saying it can't be both. I'm sure it's a sprinkle here, a sprinkle there. But I'm sure it's a sprinkling of each. But which is more? And which would you rather have? the largest mass murder or organized mass murder machine in the world, would you rather have it run, staffed, and controlled by idiots or corrupt villains? It's a tough call. It's a tough call. I don't know on that one.
Even though there is this additional money that they will use for future PDAs for equipment for Ukraine, it doesn't change the fact that much of the equipment and the weapons that are being taken out of U.S. military stockpiles still do have to be replaced. And the cost still is the inflated amount that the U.S. would be paying for them today. So that hasn't changed. It's just the way that they're accounting for how much equipment they're actually giving to Ukraine. It's kind of confusing.
Thank you so much. As the war in Ukraine tops the G.
Also, even in this limited hangout where they go, look how much we're revealing to you the counting error at the Pentagon. Look at us doing legit news here. Even in that moment, let's say we took them at face value and we said, oh my God, that's it. That's all the corruption, $3 billion. That's all the accounting error. Oh my God, thank goodness they're covering this. Thank goodness they revealed it. Even if we took it all at face value. Why are they smiling and laughing? Why shouldn't you be furious? Shouldn't you be yelling as much as I am? I look, and I know there are those of you that watch my shows, my live stream, whatever, and you're like, I like some of it, but why is he yelling so much? Look at what's going on in this world. And I do not understand why I'm one of the only ones yelling. I don't get it. And there's plenty of you, I think, watching who are this loud in your heads, right? But why is our mainstream media, even if you wanted to believe that they were doing a legit job, why are they she literally just goes, thank you for bringing us that. Okay, moving on. $3 billion missing at the Pentagon while people in America don't have health care and they're getting denied. Their babies are getting denied fucking intravenous drugs as in their first days of life. They're getting kicked out of incubators because their parents didn't have the proper insurance. But there's $3 billion that's misaccounted for at the Pentagon. Isn't that cute? Okay, let's move on. 64% of Americans have said in the past year that they have trouble paying for basic necessities. But, it's $3 billion that misaccounted for at the Pentagon. That's funny. Let's move on. It's like you reveal yourself as frauds when you say, hey, this is important. You should care about it. You should be upset about it. And now I'm going to smile and move on to the next story about the rain.